I chose to do my final project on native artist Frank Buffalo Hyde. Frank Buffalo Hyde is a native artist, a part of the Onondaga Nation located in New York. Hyde was born into a family influenced by native art, but his childhood experiences led him to create his own unique art style. His style blends traditional landscapes with aspects from popular culture, something that is not very common in the native art world. He blends these styles all while taking aim at stereotypes, appropriations, and other social issues that native people face. Frank Buffalo Hyde was born in Santa Fe, New Mexico, but spent most of his childhood living on the Onondaga Reservation with his mother. His father, Doug Hyde, was recognized by the Nez Perce tribe as a tribal artisan, which influenced his son to try various different art forms. His father also served in the Vietnam War prior to Hyde's birth. His father's exposure to the dangerous chemical Agent Orange during the war caused him to be born with certain birth defects, including being born without one of his arms and legs. Despite the challenges he faced being an artist with only one arm, Frank Hyde states that he doesn't let these defects hold him back. Rather, it gives him a chip on his shoulder. This is part of the reason why he chose not to make still life and traditional landscape art. From a young age, he was aware that people looked at him differently because of his birth defects, which is why he chose an art style that would create dialogue around social issues and make certain people feel uncomfortable. Frank Buffalo Hyde has always had a sort of defined personality. He declined an art scholarship to pursue a career in rock and roll, and also enrolled in only writing classes at an art institute. After leaving these other passions behind, he attended the Institute of American Indian Arts, where this personality trait transitioned into his art style. His style of art defies the commonalities of what people assume Native American art should look like, including things like iPhones, helicopters, and buffalo wings. His defiant art style was influenced by people like Fritz Scholler and T.C. Cannon, whose art styles echoed political movements and activism. I chose this piece of art because it shows how Native culture has become idolized ever since European settlers have arrived. Native people relied heavily on the American bison for survival, including food, clothing, shelter, and other things. The term buffalo is not a native term. It came from French fur trappers in the 1600s. European settlers took this animal that was essential to native people's survival and not only turned it into an item of popular culture that has been used for centuries, but also basically hunted these animals to extinction. The first thing in this painting to note is the placement of the Buffalo Bills logo. This is consistent with Hyde's art style, carefully placing items of popular culture in traditional looking images. The use of native terms in popular culture, especially sports, has been a big issue that has gone on for a long time. Recently, I've seen certain teams change their names that have been using derogatory terms, which hopefully can be attributed to the work like this that makes people think about the appropriations and stereotypes present in popular culture. I think it is interesting that the food name buffalo wings has nothing to do with actual buffalo or bison. The food item today has become widely popular, but originally it was created and named by European Americans. However, I can't say too many bad things about buffalo wings because they do taste very good. The man in this painting is Buffalo Bill Cody, a world-famous cowboy turned buffalo hunter. I think he specifically is included because of his name, which is a native style name similar to that of Frank Buffalo Hyde. However, Buffalo Bill Cody is not native. He became famous as a soldier during the American Indian Wars. I think Hyde chose him to be the main focus because he identifies as Buffalo Bill Cody, a name style associated with native culture, but notoriously fought against native people during the war. I chose this piece as well because it shares characteristics with the painting from before. It shows how popular culture used the word Redskins, a degrading term, as the name of an American football team because they thought the term would honor native people. Again, there has been progress in pop culture, even if it is minimal. Organizations in Washington and Cleveland have changed their sports teams' names. Regardless of the progress that has been made, this painting reveals the blatant appropriation and racism that is present in American sports industry. These two art pieces by Frank Buffalo Hyde gave me a much clearer understanding of cultural appropriation. Pop culture has taken items from native culture and blasted them all over mainstream media. Obviously, mainstream media doesn't understand native culture, claiming that Washington Redskins' name was celebrating native culture, which is a clear example of appropriation. Furthermore, the native style name Buffalo Bill Cody, along with the Redskins football team names, show how much privilege and power pop culture has to get away with these type of things. These two pieces also show survivance, particularly the mascot names that have been changed. The social movement to get these American sports teams to change their name shows public awareness of social issues that Native people face. I think the name changes symbolize more than just the removal of the derogatory term. It shows Native people's willingness to reclaim things that are a part of their cultural identity. It was necessary to bring this idea of survivance into the public spotlight, where a large amount of people became aware of this issue of appropriation and other social issues that the Native community faces. The two paintings help me better understand the idea of colonialism that exists in popular culture. These paintings include controversial issues of pop culture and shows that mainstream media can stiff-arm an entire culture for monetary purposes. Issues regarding the idolization of Native culture have been expressed for decades, but are ignored simply due to the power imbalance between Native people and American mainstream media. Since they have arrived, European Americans have believed they can just ignore issues that don't align with their beliefs, which continues to be evident today. I chose this piece because it does have a traditional landscape feel to it, which Hyde said he wanted to avoid, but he still blends modern technology into this traditional style image. I think the helicopter is shown to highlight the use of Native American names in the U.S. military, particularly that of helicopters. I also chose this piece because I think it connects with the background of his parents. It blends his mother's Native background with his father's military background, two groups that haven't exactly existed peacefully in the past. I think it is interesting to note that in most landscape-style paintings done by Hyde that includes animals, it shows them running away, in particular running away from modern technology, which to me symbolizes the disturbance of peace that is brought by new technology, specifically that in war, which Hyde has been exposed to for his whole life. Hyde's unique connection with war helped me better understand colonialism. Focusing specifically on the use of Agent Orange in war, it shows the carelessness and selfishness of certain military practices. The chemical has since been banned, but other than that, not much was done for the people that were affected by Agent Orange. It shows the power imbalance that exists in the military. They could use a lethal, life-altering chemical for personal gain, but turn a blind eye to all the consequences that were brought by the use of this chemical. Hyde's art pieces help me understand the stereotypes certain cultures face. His blend of contemporary and traditional symbols challenged the way most people think about Native art and what it should look like. To me, his art style has a sarcastic component to it. It's almost as if he told a person to paint a traditional Native American landscape, but certain contemporary items are carefully chosen to reflect pop culture and current events. Hyde is quoted as saying, "I put a mirror up to pop culture and redefined it," which is evident throughout all of his art pieces. The inclusion of the helicopter in the first painting is a great representation of cultural appropriation and stereotypes. The use of the helicopter names Apache and Black Hawk is again an example of using things from Native culture without understanding them. The stereotype that Native people were great warriors is why these machines of war were named after Native tribes, even though most conflict stems from the U.S. military. Frank Buffalo Hyde focuses on aspects of particular culture, popular culture, and technological advancements. He is quoted as saying, "My work is very much influenced by and a reaction to current events, music, movies, literature, so it's not necessarily tied to a certain style of bright colors. It is more the true definition of popular culture, which is right now." Again, this image is not what comes to mind for most people when they think of Native art. When Hyde was asked about the influence of social media on both Native culture and popular culture, he is quoted as saying, "Relationships are sometimes started and ended over text. A lot of people exist on social media and don't know how to have actual conversations." I think this idea resonates with a lot of different people and is portrayed clearly in these two pieces of art. Hyde does a lot of work with iPhones and other technology because it has been a big cultural change over the last 50 years. I think this piece symbolizes society's obsession with virtual realities and the transition toward a more technological dependent and internet-based society. I think this piece also symbolizes the intersection of the past and the present. This painting includes a Native person dressed in traditional regalia, but the background colors make it have more of a modern feel to it, not to mention the VR headset that the Native person is wearing. I think this shows how willing Native culture is to adapting to modern technology, even though certain stereotypes will make you think the opposite. I think Hyde uses stereotypes as fuel for the art he creates, and he also tends to throw an ugly truth back in the face of the audience. For these two paintings, he forces the audience to realize that people are obsessed with new technology, and it changes the way people behave. These two pieces put into perspective how Native people are facing problems with cultural identity in the modern world. I made a connection to the James Luna piece we talked about in class, to take a picture with the real Indian exhibit, and how people only tended to take pictures with him when he was wearing traditional attire. I think this is because people can falsely identify with a culture on social media by just posting a picture with someone from a different culture. These pieces show the idea of resistance by forcing the audience to understand stereotypes facing Native culture. Museum culture for many years depicted the stereotype that Native people couldn't adapt to modern times as well as other groups. I think Hyde's art does a great job of reclaiming that idea and showing that Native people are accustomed to new technology. I think these last two pieces also do a great job showing how it may not be the greatest thing to completely submerge ourselves in modern technology. It is important to keep values and traditions so that we don't change who we are as people. Frank Buffalo Hyde's unique childhood experiences made him want to create an art style that would change what people thought. Coming from different backgrounds, he wasn't afraid to blend his art styles and change the way people think about Native art. I think his art is trying to explain how Native people exist in popular culture the same way as everyone else does. I think his art reflects how people don't really realize this until they see someone who looks like a stereotypical Native person using modern technology. Overall, I think these paintings help the viewer understand survivance and cultural appropriation the best. When you look at Hyde's art, it causes you to think about things in a way that you never had before. It sparks conversation about social issues and stereotypes that natives face because of popular culture. He makes it very clear how Native culture has been idolized and transformed into different things prevalent in our modern society. I think his blend of traditional and contemporary art works against what people think stereotypical Native art should look like. He puts a mirror up to popular culture to reflect what is going on in the world, but he also puts a mirror up to show how parts of culture are idolized and appropriated in the media.